Hello, everyone, and welcome. Our guest today is Kidus Asfaw. He is currently in Nairobi, Kenya. He is the co-founder and CEO of Kubik, an environmental tech company turning plastic waste into low-carbon buildings. Kidus led technology and innovation initiatives for UNICEF. He was the former product lead for UNICEF's largest open source projects with over 40 country deployments to support some of the largest and most critical programs improving the lives of children. Previously, he worked at the World Bank and at Google. Kidus is a public policy graduate from Princeton and a biomedical engineer from Duke. Welcome, Kidus.
Thanks for having me.
Kidus, I want to start where you started. Where did you grow up, and what was your journey prior to founding Kubik?
So about a month into being born in San Diego, my family moved to Ethiopia. That's where they're from. That's where I'm from. And I spent about 16 years there. I grew up in the same house that entire time in a place called Bole. And this was a really formative moment in my life. This was a moment where I noticed the relative privilege I had to great access to education. It took me to a great college in North Carolina called Duke. And it really did shape what I wanted to be, which was a public servant for those in need. And that's how I landed in places like the World Bank and UNICEF. After spending about 10 years doing incredible work with very incredible people all over the world, I decided to start something that was very relevant to places like Addis, to places like Bole, where I grew up, which was how we can actually tackle a very critical issue around waste, and at the same time around the affordability of living in fast-growing cities like the place that I'm from.
You started Kubik. It's a startup. What does it
Yeah.
do, and how does it do it?
We take plastic waste at Kubik and turn it into low-cost, low-carbon building materials. Now, I spent my entire time as an adult focused on frontier tech, like the things you would hear about right now, blockchain, drones, AI. But the most critical and most important thing, like I mentioned earlier, was how do we actually tackle challenges and problems for the base of the population in places that you're trying to address a need for? In my case, these were people that were living in continents like Africa and Asia. And it came down to housing. People need to live somewhere before they can start thinking about other things, right? The lack of a clean place, the lack of an affordable place to live a dignified life was inaccessible to most. And when my co-founder Penda and I started to think about how we can tackle this, we realized one of the biggest issues was around access to building materials. If we were able to tackle the ability to get affordable building materials into the real estate market, it actually has a downstream effect on how we would also be able to make it affordable to live in these places for the majority of people. And that's what Kubik is focused on.
How did you come up with the idea for Kubik?
Well, it goes to about 2018 when a close mentor and colleague of mine, who was then the UNICEF head in the Ivory Coast, told me about this really remarkable thing that they were doing, where they were taking plastic waste and converting it into bricks to make classrooms. The vision was much broader than that. He saw this ability of actually creating a circular economy that can make places cleaner, empower people that are waste pickers, and make them into entrepreneurs. And all of this coming back to making very affordable infrastructure like schools for places that have a very tight budget.
There was an aha moment that led to the creation of Kubik. It was at UNICEF. Can you tell us about the aha moment?
I clearly remember that day where I walked out of my then New York apartment on a Sunday, picked up the New York Times, and here was our school from Cote d'Ivoire on the front page. Then, a few weeks later, here we are again on the BBC, we're on CNN, we're on Al Jazeera, and all of us that were working on this project realized we were onto something. This was a moment where we realized that here we are taking plastic trash, such as bottles and plastic bags, and making it into schools. And everyone was recognizing that this was a really big and phenomenal innovation.
Kidus, what types of buildings will you build with Kubik?
everything from a ground floor school to a multi-story high-rise apartment. What makes our product really cool is we can actually supplement a lot of the polluting materials that are traditionally used into something very low carbon like Kubik's.
What is the carbon impact of Kubik?
So, first off, construction is very polluting. And within construction, when you think of the building materials that are used, they contribute to about 20% of pollution in the world. So when you think of climate change, 20% is because of what we're using right now. Cubic is able to reduce that by 5 times. And that's something that we're really proud about. And we actually want to increase that number over time.
Kidus, what you're doing with Kubik is really cool. You're removing plastic waste, you're turning it into buildings. I think that's really important. How do you think this space will evolve?
COP26 last year was a very transformational moment around this. There's been a lot more pledge from the private sector to invest in sustainable construction and real estate. And what we hope that will do is encourage both existing and new companies to be investing more in tackling climate change within the real estate sector. Kubik is going to be one of many companies that does this, but where we're going to be playing our role is continuing to evolve our product to make a bigger dent in climate change.
There must be a lot of trash. Can you give us a sense of the magnitude of this problem?
I remember in 2018 hearing about the largest landfill in East Africa, which wasn't too far away from where I grew up in Ethiopia, having a trash avalanche. It killed people. So it was very serious. As part of my work now, I went to visit this place and really understand how much trash there is, especially how much plastic trash there is. And what I saw just did not prepare me for what I had in mind. Yes, there was a lot of waste, there was a lot of trash, but there was over 3,000 people that were living here, that were subsisting on picking this trash and trying to make a living off of it. And they were doing it in a way that, I mean, I remember seeing this girl that her skin and the clothes that she was wearing had the same color. It was that bad. And this was the moment where I realized Kubik's mission, in one way, is bringing environmental dignity and removing waste in countries, but it actually had a huge power to change the lives of people that are actually doing the job of recycling and waste collection. I found that to be a very transformational moment for me.
Thank you, Kidus, for joining us today. Really enjoyed this conversation. All the best with Kubik. I can't wait to see what you all build,
Thank
literally
you.
and metaphorically. Thank you.
Thanks for having me again, Gabor.